to our world, and I would much rather have our leaders be accountable to a higher power than think that they are the higher power. So I'll start. Dear Lord, let's please bless all individuals who have come here today to listen to a message of hope, a message of truth, and bring everyone together in solidarity to bring freedom to our future, to our children, and to our country, and to the world. Bless us all here in our travels when we travel back home after this event, and bless all who are here. Amen.
Amen.
You agree?
I agree. So my name is Dana Blayon. I am the very newly elected Director of Communications. So that's a new job that I took on. Our past communications director ended up having extra work issues. He was unable to fulfill all of the tasks of a director needed, so I stepped into place. So we're looking for extra volunteers. Anybody out there that would like to join our communications team, I am open to conversation. We need everyone from graphics to marketing to writing and communications. We'd love to have you. So today we're going to have a few speakers. Unfortunately, Art couldn't make it today. I'm sorry, but we are going to bring him here via the air. So he will be able to come and join us virtually and speak with you all one-on-one, well, not one-on-one, but as the group. He hopefully will be able to make the next meeting that we come through. We're going to have a few other speakers, Dr. Mackis and Bob Leon, and a couple of our other tip directors, just to give you some information about the party. We're going to start off with Vicki Bayford. She is our CA and membership director. We've kind of got them both combined right now. And she's just going to give you a little information about the CAs in the area and what it involves. So.
Right on. Good to see you, Vicki.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, I'm not going to make this really long. I just wanted to kind of give everybody here an update on what we're up to and what's going. We've been growing very rapidly. We just recently divided the province into regions now, so now we'll have some regional directors that will be helping get the CAs set up, and where there is active CAs, they'll have a point of contact so that it's not just me, because this is getting very big very quickly. And again, if you are interested, we actually don't have a CA formed here yet in the Ponoka riding. So if you want to get on board and help get things going in your community, and look for a candidate for this area, I strongly encourage you to come and talk to us at the end of the meeting. Also, our nomination contests across the province now are now open. So we have vetting boards and all of those things set up now and in place. So if you want to represent the independence movement in the next May 2023 election, I really hope you'll step forward. We need a lot of good people with a solid foundation, ethical people, and people that want to really make change. I know you guys know, a lot of you know anyway, that we've been really busy and doing a lot of these events. We did a press conference on Thursday at the legislature regarding the judicial injustice that's been going on around this province. I've been talking to a few families that have reached out, and even since that press conference, a couple more have stepped forward as far as the action committee that's going to be formed regarding the injustices going on within the social services thing. So that's another thing I just want to get out there, is if you are dealing with a lot of these really tough issues that unfortunately it seems that our current sitting MLAs are unable to deal with. We are going to be having a community action group. So no, this isn't going to be run by the Independence Party, but we are definitely going to help support and get that message out. We have a really great lady who is in the battle of her life for her children, and she's probably going to be heading this action group up. So just so everyone's aware, we are, like I said, rapidly growing, and we really need your support. Without your individual contribution, nothing's going to change. We need every single one of you that support the independence movement to get on board, and we have to stop being afraid of the lesser of two evils. I spoke in Calgary at the rally yesterday, and I just asked a few questions, asked where people's mindsets were as far as, you know, the climate agenda, where they were sitting on the digital ID, how they felt about all these things that are right now, and as we speak, being put forward. And then at the end of that, I asked them, I said, now, do you want to go down that path? At the end of the day, do you want to go down that path? And obviously everybody in that particular group of people said, no, they don't. Well, then you have to do something completely different. And the Independence Party is completely different. There is no vote splitting when you're not voting for the same thing in two different parties. We are not the same. We have our own identity, and we have our own belief system, and we are strongly pushing that message forward for anyone who wants to get involved. This choice needs to come down to Albertans at the end of the day. You need to decide where you want to go, and it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot harder than taking some of these other paths, I understand that. But we need courage now more than ever, and we need to take bold steps. So with that, please get in touch, either through our website, talk to us here at the end of the event, or yeah, just reach out. We're always here with an open ear as much as possible, and thanks so much for showing up today.
Thank you, Vicki. And it comes down to the Independence Party is more than just independence for our nation or for our province. It's your independence too. Because if you're independent, then you're living a very healthy life, and your children are having a very healthy life. Independence is the ultimate freedom to choose how you want to live. So when you're always dependent on someone or something, or on the government to make sure that you fall underneath their rules and you have no freedom, then you're not independent. So it comes right down to the individual. So Alberta, brave and free is what we need to be. So we're going to start off with Bob Leon. Bob is my husband, so it's going to be a great thing sharing a board with my husband. We work very well together. We've been working together for over 25 years, close to 30. So I think we can help each other get the job done. And he has been working on this project of independence, or actually it's more of a mission, since last year. So he'll fill you all in. Everybody, Bob Leon.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, thanks for being here today. As Dana said, we've been advocating for our freedoms and, you know, for the future of our kids here now. For me, it's been about 5 years, I guess, or more now. we sold our business interests at the end of 2014. And for the first time in my life, I had time to volunteer in politics and get involved behind the scenes, and I'm glad I did. Our MLA was a 6-year staffer under Kenny when Kenny was in Ottawa as an MP. So I had inside access and I learned a lot about politics. I'm glad I did that. I walked away on May 14th, 2020, very angry and disgusted with what was going on. I was pushing back before that on what I saw. I wrote a big long email on leaving the UCP, and I spoke of everything that I hoped to see in politics that I saw none. And that was accountability, integrity, transparency, honesty, and respect. There is none there in any party. They don't represent us like they should. So I walked away and began searching for different ideas. One of the co-founders and former presidents of the Alberta Prosperity Project. It's where I learned about this solution. And I left that organization to the Independence Party when I realized that that party was as grassroots as it gets, just regular Albertans looking to change the future of this province for the better of all of us. I'm a proud Métis with Native ancestral ties that date back to my 4th grade grandfather and my 3rd grade uncle, Chief Black Powder and Chief Big Bear. They were the last holdouts to the signing of Treaty 6. And they fought long and hard, and they literally died for the people in chains and shackles, watching their people imprisoned on their land. And in a sweat lodge ceremony 2 years ago, the spiritual leader turned to me and said, "Bob, do you understand that communism has returned to our country?" And I said, "I certainly do. I'm working on it." And that's what we're talking about today. That's what they've done to us. One of their quotes really resonates with me today. They said, "Come to us as men, do not come to us with trinkets," when they're talking to their politicians of their day. And that's the same thing that we see our governments, our parties, all of them now, trying to buy votes. With our money, with our trinkets. So I got a question that I'd like to ask everybody. How many are familiar with the World Economic Forum?
Oh, yeah.
How about the UN Sustainable Development? Good, okay. I just want to read a quote from a recent quote from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida. If everybody's familiar with him, he's been a great leader through these last 3 years, standing up for people, his people. He said, "Policies coming out of the World Economic Forum are dead upon arrival in Florida. They do this thing in Davos. All of these elites come into the World Economic Forum and basically their vision is they run everything and everybody else is like a peasant. Underlying a lot of that is the Chinese Communist Party." That's who's behind this, one of the members anyway. So in Alberta and Canada, a betrayal has been playing out right in front of our eyes for many, many years. The WF UN Sustainable Development Agenda comes to Canada and Alberta obviously through Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada. The NDP embrace it, whether you're talking about the provincial parties or their national party. But it was the Conservative Party of Canada, going back as far as Brian Mulroney, who opened the door in Brazil. He's the first one to sign us onto this in 1993. In 2009, it was Stephen Harper and the Conservatives that signed us onto the Sustainability Act, which is the foundation for the UN Sustainable Development. In 2015, he signed us onto the Paris Climate Accord, which is the climate change component of this agenda. He signed it 5 days before he was leaving office. He set the table, and I'll go through a bit of it here. It's the document I handed out, and I urge anyone that's involved in any organizations, Take Back Alberta or with the UCP, and no offense here, please talk about this. Bring this to your meetings. It needs to be talked about. It's important just to start the discussion, because I tell you what, when people, in the last couple of weeks especially, when they're waking up to what this UCP are involved in and what this Conservative Party involved in, they walk away from that, and they should walk away from it. They should walk away from our betrayers that are trying to enslave us all. So all the way back to 2014 in Alberta here, the Alberta PCs were working with the WF. Here's a quote. The Alberta WF meeting was announced in a press release during Premier Redford's trip to the annual WF summit. The event would be a first to Alberta, for Alberta. The government and the WF would work together to develop a program on energy and climate change talks. Daniel Smith was the leader of the Wildrose at that time. And there was something going on, it was getting delayed, and this is her quote. The postponement of a prestigious World Economic Forum session planned in Alberta for late April is highly embarrassing. So I'm sure you guys have heard about Justin Trudeau's just transition plan for our oil. They want to shut down our oil. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. In 2021, this organization, who has been working with the UCP and the Trudeau government at the same time, Forte, F-O-R-T-E, the CEO stated that our government is moving very quickly to reskill and train people for the green jobs to replace unsustainable industries such as coal mining, beef farming, logging, and oil and gas. He goes on to say, how do we reskill oil and gas workers and people in unsustainable industries? And this is what Forte is. This is the quote. Forte works by retraining citizens to reach the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as part of its ongoing partnership with the WEF. The last time I checked was November 18th. This organization, through a lobby organization called Wellington Advocacy, remember that, Wellington Advocacy, all inner circle operatives and a business partner of Kenny and Harper. That's them. And they're the ones that have been lobbying, working with the Alberta government on Forte's behalf. November 18th, they were in Premier Daniel Smith's office. So the UCP are now fully committed to the WF, UN, Trudeau climate change component of this agenda. Here's a quote from our government in 2021. Alberta is committed to significant emissions reductions in line with the country's climate obligations, including Canada's Paris Agreement pledge to cut its emissions by 30%. The UCP tripled the Alberta industrial carbon tax in December. Tripled it. Here's a quote. Alberta's tax on industrial carbon dioxide emissions will triple in order to keep pace with the federal carbon pricing schedule. Daniel Smith quoted or stated when it comes to her opinion on climate change. I talked about how the science wasn't settled on climate change, and I can tell you, I've come around full circle on that. I am now probably the first and early adopter of thinking that we can hit a net zero target and get there faster than anyone anywhere else. Another lobby organization in Alberta is called the Alberta Enterprise Group. It was founded and is chaired by an individual named Murray Edwards. Murray Edwards also founded and chairs still Canadian Natural Resources. Daniel Smith was the president of that organization in 2021. And it was at that point she started promoting net zero, carbon pricing, carbon capture. Let's talk about carbon capture. Murray Edwards partnered with Bill Gates, of all people. They threw in $2 million to start up an organization in Calgary, Alberta, Carbon Engineering Limited, who happens to hold the patent on carbon capture in our province. Murray Edwards, who fled Canada to get away from paying taxes. CNRL was one of the worst offenders, the worst, for force jabbing their employees. I have many friends that work with them. And I've had friends that have had strokes since that time. These people are betraying us for money. $31.24 billion is up for grab in carbon capture, a partnership between the UCP and Trudeau. $31.24 billion of our money. 70% of carbon capture projects are paid for by us. And that's just the start. Full-on partnership. So as we face that treasonous betrayal, the rights, freedoms, and dignity of many Albertans and their children are being abused, as Vicki touched on. It is truly heartbreaking and tragic what is going on with some families here. The outreach to us now is unbelievable, and it is heavy. It is heavy to hear their stories. Just want to touch on a step back, but when it comes to this UN agenda, just today, this morning, I had outreach from somebody from the Blood Reserve in southern Alberta that was used by Daniel Smith and her team. I'm meeting with them on Tuesday. She is an expert on UNDRIP. UNDRIP is a divide and conquer UN agenda. it's designed to divide us with the First Nation communities, we will have a conversation and we will try to bring peace before they do that to us, before our government does that to us. So we're hoping that they're going to be another lead on this, another committee we're setting up outside of the party to talk about this. We're having an event on March 4th in Calgary, Alberta, full day. Mark Friesen, he's an expert on this. Dr. Salim Manzoor, also an expert on this and also an expert on geopolitical landscape. And so they're going to give a presentation. And Mark Moreno from the Climate Depot in the US, he is going to give a presentation on climate lockdowns. Climate lockdowns are real. They will be here. Look up 15-minute cities, all of that. That is real. And that is this UCP government bringing it here. And I get very upset about that. That now, and I'm going to carry on here, because this right here. Our leader, Pastor Archer Pulowski, faces 10 years in prison. 10 years in prison, terrorism charge, for giving a sermon in Coops. Dr. William Mack speaks now on the tragedy of children dying from this vaccine that they should have never been given, because by the time they were started giving it, they knew what it was going to do. This government knew. A meeting was held on November 10th, 2021. Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of this technology, Dr. Paul Alexander, former advisor to the White House, WHO, with the federal government. He is a brilliant man, and he's laid it all on the line for the good of the people all around the world. He's turned down $1 million Pfizer bribe, plus $50,000 a month. Dr. Peter McCullough, another great man. Somebody that a guy like Bob from Northern Alberta could reach out to Dr. McCullough and have interactions with him, asking him how it could help, and he would help. That's amazing. These people laid it all on line. So they met with 10 Alberta MLAs on November 10th, 2021, and it was very clear the alarm, they were just sounding alarm, shut it down now. It was just before the kids were going to get vaccinated, and they didn't listen. Shane Getson was supposed to table the science and the ledge. Once it was tabled to become source documents, I got it all in emails. I'm happy to send that to anyone. And it didn't happen. Todd Lowen, my friend, said to me 2 months after the time, the reason he didn't do it, he didn't want to look like an extremist. Isn't that something? And now my friend is a minister. Good for him. Mothers, fathers, and grandparents are hopelessly trying to defend their children from being physically, psychologically, and sexually abused in this province. Trafficked. And our government turns their backs on them. Wives, mothers, and children watch their husbands, fathers, and sons. Chris Lysak, Tony Olenek, Jerry Morin, Chris Carver, who I just spoke to again today. That's a great man. All these men have done a great thing standing up for us. And this is what they get. Almost a year now they've been in prison. Almost 1 year. And nobody wants to talk about them. Shame is right. The 4 Coots political prisoners in prison for 1 year without fair and due process as rapists and murderers are being let out. These men have lost everything. Everything. But I tell you what, it's truly an honor meeting these guys and talking to them. They are lions. And they will be heard. And what Chris is doing, especially in Lethbridge Remand, amazing leader this man is, amazing. When he first got there, the top floor was called the Res, and now it's not. Now it's their one. They have Bible studies, he does mentoring. He's a great man. There are many letters, emails, and phone calls from Alberta families suffering injustices of this government agencies go unanswered. So as I watch people suffering and being abused by their government, I'm reminded that Alberta MLAs go to the legislature as voices of the people, of us, to question and challenge the government of Alberta. MLAs have a moral and civic duty to hold operating branches of government accountable. This includes ministers and the premier. That's how that works. An MLA's role is, and I quote, to exercise parliamentary oversight of government, not to protect their party, to provide oversight for us. All Alberta MLAs, UCP and NDP included, are complicitly guilty in their failure to defend and protect the safety, rights, freedoms, and dignity and lives of Albertans. So the Independence Party is here to advocate for, to serve, and to defend the people of Alberta. We were honored to stand on the steps of the legislature for those families, and we're not stopping. We've told us, use us however you need to use us. We will be there standing right with you. We offer this grassroots organization to act as a shield for the people, to act as opposition and oversight at a time when the Alberta government needs it the most. Given the betrayal that plays out before us, Alberta desperately needs elected representatives in their legislature who will hold the government's feet to the fire. And so I would say it's time that we take the road less traveled, because what we're doing hasn't been working at all. It's led us to today. And all it would take would be a few TIP MLAs having a presence in the legislature even, just to get our foot in the door, to bring opposition, accountability, and transparency. With 3 MLAs, we form a caucus. So that would be an official caucus that gives us a stronger voice in the legislature, support staff, and it would solidify our presence. With enough seats to hold the balance of power in a UCP or NDP minority, that will provide the means to hold either of those parties to account, to give the people of Alberta power to push back on the UCP and NDP's partnership with Ottawa, the WF, and the UN. That can be as little as 3 seats. We don't know how that'll shape up. So you combine that knowledge with a poll done in October 2021, an extensive poll, 1,000 Albertans, that showed 63% support at that time for independence in rural. 63%. That's the last public poll I've seen. They don't want us to know that. So with those two combined, that's why these parties are scared. That's why they got a lot of people running around the province trying to squash this. Why would they try to squash the only organization that is truly standing up for people of this province? That's where I try to maintain my patience. And what about a majority? What can we do with that? That's when we bring meaningful change for all Albertans. There will be no more talk about maybe having our own police force, maybe having our own pension. No. We'll just do it. We don't need a Sovereignty Act to do any of that. That is within our rights today. The Sovereignty Act, as it stands today, is nothing more than political theater. They gutted it. It has no teeth to it. Dr. Michael Wagner spoke on it last night in Edmonton. There's no teeth to it. They've already exposed. When you go to a negotiation, you don't go to a negotiation with no leverage, unless you don't want to change anything. So for the first time in Alberta's history, we will finally have the means to defend ourselves with that. Albertans will be provided with a powerful solution of defending our province and our people from Ottawa and from the globalists through peaceful and democratic means at hand. A referendum on Alberta independence. With independence, that is our path forward to truly breaking the chains and shackles that bind all Albertans, First Nations included, who've been under the boot heel of these governments for far too long. It's time they were freed. So that's all I have today. Just want to say, thanks again for coming out here. This is a lot of work doing what we're doing. It takes a lot of energy, but we're proud to be able to do this, and we're not stopping. We're dedicating our lives to this. We've already made that decision. We're not running away anywhere. We're staying here and we're fighting. We're fighting for the people of Alberta, and we're hoping to set the example for the rest of Canada on how to do this. Because every province can do this. As president of APP at Outreach from Saskatchewan and BC, about this idea, it's happening again. There's a good movement in northern BC. I've learned that as a province, you could have a separate independence movement in a region. So we've got conversations going up there. We want to be united in this, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. So that's what we're hoping, and that's going to gain some traction. The press conference the other day, They ignored the Coots prisoners, they ignored the victims of government agencies, and they focused on Art's story because it was, Arthur and against Daniel Smith and that her broken promises, where she's completely backed down from that now. Now that they're done using the freedom movement, now she throws that away. But irregardless, National Post, they had a link to our party there. That was a good moment to see. So we're going to keep going and do what we can to make meaningful change for our children and future generations to come. God bless Alberta. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bob. So we have, Art, of course, couldn't be here in person, unfortunately, but I have him here on screen right now. If I can get this going, and got half of them. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur Pawlowski, the leader of the Independence Party.
Thank you very much for having me in. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah, it's all good, okay. Well, a very interesting story. I yesterday went with my family to the Fiddler on the Roof in Calgary, and we could not go to those types of places for a very long time. And then finally for Christmas, we got the tickets to go over there. And on the way, I saw Vicky and the rally speaking in Calgary. And believe it or not, I was not even allowed to stop and say hi to them because I could be arrested and thrown back in prison. That's your UCP government. That's Daniel Smith. We can say the villains were taken care of. Kenny is no longer with us. He stepped down or he was removed. And we can start rebuilding our province and we can start having back our freedoms. However, that's not the case. The problem we're facing is that the party is so corrupted, it's corrupted to the core. And Daniel Smith was elected on the promises that when she becomes the Premier of Alberta, she's going to bring amnesty. She's going to set people like myself and thousands of other Albertans free because she realized that what was done to us had nothing to do with science, had nothing to do with keeping Albertans safe, but it was political in nature. And her own cabinet minister, that is right now the deputy premier, Casey Madhu, said that this attack on our rights, arrests and restrictions and mandates had nothing to do with science, but it was politically motivated. And yet, even though she won by giving us those promises, a few days ago, just before we had the conference, the press conference on the steps of the legislature, she went publicly saying that she has no intention of keeping her words. We have seen this stuff over and over again since I remember. Politicians that will come and will tell you one thing, and then the next day they will flip-flop like those political flip-flopping pancakes that they are, telling you one thing in the morning and then completely changing everything in the afternoon with zero accountability. And if you like me, if you are like the members of this party, I hope that you're sick and tired of politicians doing whatever they want, using us, and then discarding us like a filthy rag until the next election. And you know what's more shocking? It's bad that they're doing this, but for me as a pastor, for me as a Polish immigrant, what's more shocking is that we fall for something like this over and over again. And that I do not understand. We have to stop this revolving door. We have to stop this craziness of voting for the lesser of two evils. And today, my friends, God has given us this opportunity to have an option. Maybe before we did not have an option. I remember when we created, I was part of that, Wild Rose 1.0, the first one, the original one that Daniel Smith destroyed. I remember the vibe, I remember the excitement. I truly believe that we can take back our destiny into our own hands with that party. And look what they did. The professional politicians, they crossed the floor and they murdered our movement. And it's very fascinating because I'm observing what is happening right now with the UCP. And of course, since Danielle Smith decided not to keep her word, it looks like she's undoing herself. For a number of days since Thursday, the mainstream media are talking about this. And they are challenging her for not keeping that word. But she cannot help it. Those types of people are career politicians, and they will do everything in their power to keep that stinky chair of theirs no matter what. They're fighting for it because in the end of the day, that's their entire life, is their position, being ministers or being premiers or MLAs, and they will kill for that. And they are actually, in fact, killing Albertans to keep that power. Dr. Makis, I hope you had an opportunity to listen to him, or he will be speaking after, I'm not sure, but he is going to tell you, or he already did, what is really happening with those jobs. We have to change the system. We have to bring the checks and balances. We have to bring the accountability back into not just the political system, but also to the doctors, to the nurses, to the judges, to the police officers, to the chief of police, because it looks like for the past decades, they can literally get away with murder, and there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. The politician comes in before the election, promises you the moon, and then delivers a rotten apple, and then you're stuck with the apple, and there's nothing you can do about it. We need recall. We need to elect our own judges. We need to elect the chief of police. We need to have our own police force. We need to create anti-corruption force, the constitutional sheriffs that will be keeping an eye on the politicians, the judges, the police, doctors, people that swore to uphold the law, people that swore to and do no harm, need to be kept accountable. Who is going to do that? It's fascinating because I hear right now all over Alberta that people will come to me and they would be terrified with the notion that Notley might win this next election, that we are splitting the votes. However, think, we have nothing to split. All those parties are identical. They say the same things, they are forwarding the same agenda. And it looks like there is nothing we can do about it. So we have no choice anymore. We have to change that and start voting for the French minority. Today, and the last week, I was preaching on a story of David. David was the French minority, if you will, when he stood against the giant called Goliath. We are facing the same thing, but let me remind you how the story ends. David didn't stand a chance. David, no one believed that he can do it. And the only thing that God wanted David to do is just show up. And God did the rest. We are going to do the same thing. We will show up, we will vote, we will do our best, we will plow around, we're going to put as many seeds into the hearts of Albertans as possible, and in the end of the day, the truth will triumph. But we gotta do this together. We have to do this together. I'm watching closely this whole drama of Danielle Smith walking away from her promises unfolding, and I'm absolutely fascinated at how everything is playing out. it looks like God has given us this opportunity of free advertisement. The only thing we needed to do is show up in Edmonton on the steps of the legislature in a freezing cold Siberian weather, and we did. We braved -11. It was cold. I was in a suit, and I'm telling you, I made a major mistake as a man, as a husband. I did not listen to my wife. And I'm telling you, man, listen to me. I am married 30 years. Listen to your wives. It might save your life one day. So I didn't, however, and I paid dearly. I was shivering, I was cold, and I'm thinking to myself, why did I do it again? I should know better. When my wife Googles it up on the phone and says, Art is going to be really cold, put extra clothes on, I should just keep my mouth shut and say, yes, Mom, I'll do it for my own sake. So we have to start listening to each other. We have to start believing that this is possible. And I'm telling you, it's possible. You're talking with a Polish immigrant that grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. And I remember that time, 1980, 81, 82, when I saw millions of Polish people taking it to the streets, and they were not using violence, they were not shooting guns, they were not murdering officers. They simply refused to cooperate with the tyrants. And they were doing this in unity, in such an amazing way that within few next years, the biggest empire on earth, the Soviet Empire, collapsed. The Berlin Wall got broken, Iron Curtain was no more, and Poland in 1989 had its first free and democratic election since the invasion of the Nazi Germany in 1939. If they could do it, we can do it as well. You see, they're no different than you and me. They were people that were sick and tired of tyranny. They were just simply people that said enough is enough. And I say to you, I see some gray hair on the screen. I want to talk to you. Because sometimes we have tendency to look and say, what can I do? What can I do? There's nothing I can do. That's a lie from the pit of hell. We need you. And sometimes if people don't want to stand up for themselves because they will say, well, I lived my life. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to stir. I don't want to push the envelope. I understand that. But don't look upon yourself right now. Look at the future. Look at your children and your grandchildren. Whatever we're doing right now, we're doing it for them. I have 3 children that were born to me here in Canada. I was offered millions of dollars to leave Canada and move to America. I was treated there as like a hero. And I chose to come back to Canada because here is my home. Here, in this beautiful province of ours, God has given me a house and 3 children. Here is my home, and I'm willing to stand up and defend what's rightfully belongs to me. And I want you to do the same thing. Rise up, stand up. Do not believe the lie that the enemy is more powerful than you. Remind the devil when he shows up with that lie, the story of David and Goliath. Remind the devil that it was David that struck him with a stone, but he used the sword of the enemy to chop Goliath's head off. We're going to use educational system against them. We're going to use justice system against them. We're going to use police force against them. We're going to use political realm. We're going to use mainstream media against them. Alberta, I believe we're on the verge of an awakening. And I believe that if we do this the right way here, other provinces and territories will join. It feels like the eyes of the world are fixed on Alberta. I know that we can do this. Do not believe the enemy. Do not believe the lie. If God is for us, who can be against us? Greater is He, the Bible says, that is in us than the one that is in them. If God is with us, we already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet.
Right.
The only thing we need is just to show up. So do not be discouraged. I think in the past few days, and it's still going right now, we witnessed again that the French minority, this little party of ours, could shake the entire Alberta's government. And the government is still being shaken. That tells me we can do this. We got 5 months. 5 months to bring the best candidates into the race and support them with everything we have. And I'm telling you that we can do this. So I want to thank you so much for coming and for being there with us, and we're going to continue spreading the word around, telling people, you know, for the past 3 years, the enemy showed up with the fear and the terror. It's like they put a blanket of fear around the world, and it scared a lot of people. You know what we need to do to counterattack that? We need to spread the whole world with a message of hope, message of victory. That's how you fight the enemy. When he shows up to scare you, you tell him, my God is bigger than your God. Get out. Get out. And that's exactly what I did. So pray for me. In 2 weeks, that's why it's very hard for me to travel. I gotta focus. In 2 weeks, I have a trial of my life. I'm facing 10.5 years of imprisonment. On the 2nd of February, I have to go to Lethbridge and defend myself. We have 2 legal teams. We got criminal lawyers, we got civil lawyers, and the fight is on. But I want you to see something. I'm not depressed, I'm not suicidal, even though I'm on house arrest and I need to have a written special permission from my probation officer to travel. You don't see me panicking, whining, and complaining, because I know who my God is. And I know that in the end of the day, God's will be done. I just need to align my will with His will. God is saying to you and me, take what's rightfully yours, take back Alberta, and make it strong and free again. God bless you.
Well, that was Archer Pulowski. Like you said, let's come together in solidarity and let's pray for him, because it's not easy the road or the journey that any of us are traveling, but especially him. Getting ticketed for feeding the homeless, and standing up for what you believe in, and giving a sermon, and being put up for charges for terrorism for giving a sermon. You can't make this stuff up. It's crazy. I'm going to bring up our Director of Fundraising and Events, and she's going to fill you a little bit in on that.
Hi everyone, Sharon Dulett here. First of all, I want to give a big thank you to everyone for coming out, and also to our volunteers. I hope I don't miss anybody, but mostly Bert and Judy and Jim for organizing this event and helping out, so thank you. So with that said, volunteers are what we are a grassroots movement, and we need help. We're really starting to grow. We've had 4 events in the last 4 days, so we've been on the road. We're looking for volunteers of any kind. Like, I know people say they don't have time, but we have to start making time. We need help with anything. Phone calls, lots of different things, like helping out an event, helping set up tables, take down tables, or even phoning from home. When we have an event, just reaching out to other people and getting the message out for us. Another thing is money. We're looking to grow our party, so we need funds to be able to do that. And I don't know if a lot of you know, but a contribution to a political party, if you give, say you can do a contribution of $50, your refundable tax credit is $38. And then I'll give you another example, $200 would be a refund tax credit of $150. So it gets you a really good tax credit too. So we have envelopes that we're gonna pass out. If you feel that you can donate anything, would be greatly appreciated. And it helps us, all of us are volunteers, and so we're putting the money back in to be able to buy signage, to get the word of the Independence Party out there. Also, Jim, are you still here? There he is. He's got a sign-up sheet for, if anybody's interested in this CA area, to sign up to be able to help up. They want to organize a meeting. And Vicki is the organizer for other CAs, or she can get you to where you need to go. So volunteers in the CAs. So a CA is a riding, it used to be called a riding constituency association. We're looking to form them in every area, and then we're looking for really good candidates to run for MLAs. Another quick thing is we have a petition for the political prisoners, Tony, Jerry, Chris, and Chris. A very wonderful lady, Granny McKay, Margaret McKay, is selling these bumper stickers too, that the money completely, the proceeds go to help the political prisoners. The CA has some with their merchandise for sale right now. They're $10 each. And then we also have the petition. So the petition, we are over 1,000 signatures the Independence Party has captured for that group, the prisoners. And so for every 25 signatures that we capture, our MP gets 2 minutes to talk in Ottawa about it. So we'll utilize those signatures for that too. So and it'll give awareness to what's really going on in the world, or in Alberta, that these guys are still in jail. Okay, I think that's everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
So 2 minutes for every 25 petitions signed. So we can grow that time and get more exposure. Also, on those envelopes that are going to be passed around, please put your name and your residence address on it, not a PO box, but residence address on it, because Elections Alberta requires that information. Anything over $50, we must absolutely have that. Anything under $50, you can get a tax receipt for that. But if you do not want one, then it's not as necessary, as long as it's under $50. So, and if you have any questions about that, you can talk to Sharon. She'll hand out some envelopes and you can just pass them around. So, up next, how you guys all doing? You doing all right? Okay, good. Up next, we're going to have Dr. Mackes. He is an Alberta physician in Alberta, or he still is. He's doctors, just he's a little bit at odds with some of the agencies. So Dr. Mackes is an oncologist and radiologist. I said that right. And he is coming here to bring awareness to what is going on with the latest, I don't want to call it vaccine, with the latest forced medicine upon us. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mackes.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I've been battling Alberta Health Services for 7 years now, and they've shut down my cancer program in Edmonton. They wanted me to leave Alberta. I said no. They tried to bribe me with a $400,000 settlement offer to sign a non-disclosure agreement in regards to what they did to my cancer program. I said no. They wanted me to leave. I said no. And so during this battle, I've never seen a media person, not once. I have two big lawsuits against AHS, against the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta, and against the University of Alberta. I've never seen a media person. I've been to court 20 times. I've never seen a media person once. There's a complete media blackout on what happened to me, except in the past months, I have been reached out to by 5 major mainstream media outlets, journalists. Suddenly found my email, found my name. They want to talk to me. They want to ask me questions. They want to know what's going on. Why? Because I'm talking about sudden deaths after the rollout of the COVID vaccines. And of course, they ask me a few questions. They're very belligerent. They're very nasty. And they put out hit pieces. So yesterday morning, there was a 10-page hit piece that came out in Global News, smearing me, smearing what I've been talking about, what I'm going to be talking about a little bit today. I've had hit pieces done by Global News, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, Associated Press, and Reuters in the United States on what I'm going to talk about. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, hopefully I won't run too long because it's been a long afternoon, is the sudden deaths since the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. The problem is that not only is Alberta the #1 cause of death unknown, but these sudden deaths are getting younger and younger and younger, and no one is talking about it. Alberta Health Services is not talking about it. NDP is not talking about it. Rachel Notley still wants to go door to door and vaccinate everyone who hasn't been vaccinated yet. She's promised that, and I'm sure she'll carry out her promise if she gets in May 2023. UCP is not talking about it. UCP promised to clean up AHS and has done absolutely nothing for the past 3 years. So I want to play a quick video that just came out 3 days ago.
Now everyone seems to be noticing and wondering, why does it appear that an inordinate number of young, healthy Americans are dropping dead? Like 18-year-old Jordan Tyler Brisker, the high school senior who planned to join the military after graduation. He collapsed and was found unresponsive in the bathroom after PE. He died 5 days later. Or 21-year-old Hunter Brown, an offensive lineman for the U.S. Air Force Academy football team. He suffered a medical emergency while on his way to class and could not be resuscitated. And then there's Blaze Jacobs, a 17-year-old student in Ohio who went into cardiac arrest during class. A GoFundMe says that he received CPR for over an hour, but died later that night. And there's so many others. Joining me now, Dr. Peter McCullough, epidemiologist, cardiologist, and author of The Courage to Face COVID-19. Dr. McCullough, now, maybe we're overreacting to what seems to be an inordinate number of young people dying and collapsing. But your reaction to what you've seen thus far?
Laura, we examined this in a recent letter to the editor, Dr. Polycretis from Italy, and myself. Before COVID-19 vaccination in the European leagues, under age 35 active players, 29 cardiac arrests per year. Since the vaccines have been released, that number now annualized from the universe of publicly reported deaths we reviewed is now 283, nearly a 10-fold increase. And we've also demonstrated a rising mortality in those under age 15. So this is a disturbing trend. What we know is it's a straight line. Most of these leagues and teams mandated the vaccine. The FDA indicates the vaccine can cause myocarditis and blood clots, and the autopsy studies show that myocarditis and blood clots in some cases can be fatal. And now we're witnessing an explosion of death of young people.
And the next slide. This is not just happening in the United States, this is happening in Canada, it's happening in other vaccinated countries. Now, this happened just a few days ago. There was a 17-year-old boy in Newfoundland that died in his sleep, perfectly healthy. And his dad suspects the mRNA vaccine. Yesterday, I was informed on the right, there's a 10-year-old boy in Quebec, hockey player, that died suddenly. And the next slide. So this has actually been going on for the past month or two, where I've tracked about 40 kids in Canada have died suddenly between the ages of 2 to 19. And as far as I've been able to find out, the vast majority of these kids were perfectly healthy. Many of them were mRNA vaccinated. I can't determine exactly how many were mRNA vaccinated, but many were, because many of them are hockey players, many of them played basketball in school, they're in other kinds of athletics, they're in gymnastics. There's an elite level gymnast, 16-year-old boy that just collapsed. And for the hockey players, the youngest one is 6-year-old Daniel May Cabana, who played hockey in Richmond, BC. And almost certainly mRNA vaccinated. She got the flu. She wasn't getting better. Her older sisters got better. She wasn't getting better. She then developed myocarditis, which they attributed to the flu, which doesn't really happen with the flu. It happens with the vaccines. Then they finally put her in the ICU. She had a stroke and she died. Perfectly healthy 6-year-old girl. And the only reason now, the provincial health authorities are not releasing this information. The only reason we know about some of these deaths is because families are setting up GoFundMe fundraising to, for funerals and so on, because these are sudden, unexpected deaths. 40 Canadian kids in the span of less than 2 months. This started happening about mid-November, and it's just happening over and over and over. The provincial health authorities are refusing to talk about it. The Ontario government, provincial government, has refused to release any information on pediatric deaths from this recent influenza outbreak that we had. Alberta has released information on a few kids that have died, but they are refusing to release names and ages. And then the BC government sat on that information for several weeks, and then they finally relented because, again, of the GoFundMe accounts of the 6 and 9-year-old girls that died in BC. And they said, oh yeah, 6 kids have died in the past few weeks. So this is something that no one wants to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it because I can. Next slide. So if you just sort of look at the breakdown, the deaths are spread out fairly evenly across Canada, which is what you'd expect. But there are some patterns here. 12 deaths from influenza in total in the past about month and a half. That's pretty much a record. Usually we have pediatric deaths in the single digits for the entire year. For Canada, we're already at 12 that we know of. The vast majority of these deaths are in kids 5 to 11 years old. I'll keep that in mind because I'm going to explain why that may be happening. Kids 5 to 11 years old, 7 influenza deaths right in that group. If you look at the sudden deaths, which again no one is keeping track of, there's been 17 sudden deaths in the age group 12 to 19. These are high school students, and the vast majority of these high school students are in athletics. They are hockey players, they're basketball players, soccer players, gymnasts, and 17 sudden deaths in the past month and a half. And no one is saying a word. No politician, no health official. They're completely turning a blind eye to this. So since the rollout of the mRNA vaccines, and this has been known for at least the past year. I've known about this since December of 2021. There is this phenomenon called negative vaccine efficacy, which means you start off, the vaccine has some effectiveness, and this is with the data being heavily massaged, but the effectiveness drops with time, and it collapses very, very rapidly. And that was the whole reasoning why they rolled out the booster shots. They said, well, waning efficacy of the vaccines, now you're gonna need a booster shot every 6 months. Then Theresa Tam comes out and she says, now you're gonna need a booster shot every 3 months. It's because of this waning efficacy. The vaccine efficacy just goes down as time goes by. Well, the problem is what they didn't tell anybody, is that the vaccine efficacy goes below 0. And on each of these graphs, you can see that the vaccine efficacy dives below 0. What that means is that when you're below 0, it means you're more likely to get sick more likely to get hospitalized, and more likely to die than if you had never taken the vaccine in the first place. And that is what they never told anybody. Top left study is 850,000 vaccinated people in Sweden. They found starting at month 7, vaccine efficacy dropped below 0 and kept dropping. On top right, Ontario study of tens of thousands of vaccinated people goes negative very quickly just after a few months and seems to bottom out around 6 to 8 months. That's down here. Look at this negative vaccine efficacy, it's minus 40%. That just gives you an idea of how many people are getting harmed by the vaccine. Both two graphs at the bottom are CDC from the United States. This was presented in their private meetings. This shows you that it dives below 0 for every single age group. So it happens to every single age group, including teenagers. And down here, what they're basically showing that it really seems to be happening more with Omicron than with Delta. And that's sort of still a bit questionable, but this is coming out of the CDC in the United States. So what really this is evidence of immune system damage by the mRNA vaccines. There's no way vaccine efficacy can go below 0 unless the vaccine is damaging your own immune system. And we know that there's many ways that the mRNA vaccines can damage your immune system. It damages the immune cells like T cells, it interferes with their function, it interferes with their signaling. In some people they found they have a normal level of T cells and they're completely non-functional. They no longer protect you against viruses, they no longer protect you against cancer. So basically it's like you have AIDS. Next slide. So what happened in kids to 5 to 11 years old, this is from the federal government website, showing the vaccine, mRNA vaccine rollout in kids 5 to 11 years old. There was a big push in February, March, April of 2022, right here, when they vaccinated about 40% of Canadian children 5 to 11 years old. They knew that these vaccines were damaging their immune system. They didn't care, they rolled it out anyways. And so you take a look at February, March, April, add 7 to 9 months to that, and now we're in September, October, November 2022, and what do we have? We have the largest respiratory virus outbreak we have ever seen. Tens of thousands of kids sick with influenza, sick with RSV, sick with strep, sick with meningitis. Tens of thousands of kids home from school because they're so sick. Edmonton, Calgary, absence rates of 20%, 30%. It's like those kids had widespread immune suppression that they couldn't deal with the viruses that kids normally can deal with easily. It's like there was widespread AIDS in this category of kids in ages 5 to 11 years old, and it comes right 7 to 9 months after the rollout of the mRNA vaccines. Next slide. What happened with kids 12 to 17 years old? From the government website, rollout of the first booster dose. Around the same time, February, March, April, they rolled out the booster dose in the 12 to 17 years old. Fortunately, only 15% of kids 12 to 17 in Canada took the booster shot. But again, we end up at the same situation 7 to 9 months later. Their immune systems have crashed. Now they're susceptible to infections, and sudden death is happening more and more often. Now the sudden death, it can be a combination with inflammation of the heart from the vaccines, and I'll talk about that in a little bit later. Next slide. These I separated out because these are no longer kids, these are young adults, 20 and 21 years old, who died suddenly in the past month and a half. The reason I bring this up is because all of these were perfectly healthy, as far as we know. 2 of the kids went to Western University in London, Ontario, which had a very aggressive vaccine mandate, including a vaccine mandate for the booster shots, the mRNA booster shots, in order to attend school. 2 of their kids dropped dead. Spencer Cornelis was 20, dropped dead in October. Megha Thakur was 21, she dropped dead in November 24th. 3 days after Megha Thakur dropped dead, Western University announced that they consulted their medical experts, and completely coincidentally, they're rescinding their COVID-19 vaccine mandates for all their students. They knew that the booster shots are killing their students, and now they're walking it back as if it never happened. 3 days after she died, Megha Thakur, she was a fashion model. She was on TikTok. She had millions of views on TikTok. She announced that she had a heart attack. She was fully vaccinated. She had a heart attack 4 months before dropping dead. That doctors told her was because she had too much anxiety. So, if we look at what's causing the sudden deaths, aside from having your immune system really, really low and being susceptible to infections, what are the mechanisms of sudden death after mRNA vaccines? There's 3 main mechanisms. The vaccine doesn't stay in the shoulder. The lipid nanoparticle that has the mRNA, it gets into the bloodstream, it gets into the lymphatics, it ends up circulating in your bloodstream, it gets deposited to your heart, it gets deposited to your brain, it gets deposited to your kidneys, your liver. Some people end up in renal failure. Some people end up with all kinds of autoimmune diseases. It goes everywhere, and it circulates for at least several weeks. And once it gets picked up by the target organ, it expresses the spike protein. The spike protein is very inflammatory. It starts creating local inflammation. So when it gets into the heart, and we know that it gets into the heart because now there's many autopsy reports done outside of Canada. They'll never be done in Canada, but they're done outside of Canada showing that the spike protein was expressed in the heart and caused a severe inflammation. So I'll let 2 cardiologists explain what happens when you get inflammation after vaccines.
I think all cardiovascular conditions have got worse because of the vaccine. And anything and everything that can go wrong with the heart has gone wrong with the heart as a result of these mRNA vaccines. There's no doubt about it. And that's why me and Peter both separately had essentially said, because if doctors are not aware of a possible diagnosis, they'll never diagnose it. So many doctors still, unfortunately, including cardiologists, are not even conceiving of the possibility that the mRNA vaccine can cause these problems. But the list is there, it's endorsed by the WHO, whether it's cardiac arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, heart attacks, myocarditis, heart failure. And I've managed all of these people in the community who have been vaccine injured, where their doctors have missed it, but I picked it up.
We are deep in trouble now because there is a clear recognition that this myocarditis in some people can lead to a scar. The scar is a small area of like a scar you see on your skin, but the electricity goes down, and when it goes through the scar, it depolarizes slowly, then it loops up and it forms reentry. And when reentry occurs during a normal cardiac depolarization, that's the nidus for ventricular tachycardia, or VT, and that is a heart rhythm in me or you that can be well over 200 beats a minute. It starts to make us dizzy, and if we don't do something, it degenerates to ventricular fibrillation, and then we're gone. We're on the floor, and CPR is started. And if you've seen any of these montages of these athletes, when this happens, they go down like a rock. They can't even hold out their hands to protect themselves. We're just absolutely slamming to the floor. We have seen montage after montage of people having sudden cardiac death. It's called sudden adult death syndrome.
Yeah.
And myself and Steve Malhotra, a prominent cardiologist in the UK, have come up with the same conclusion, that when we see a young person now who's previously healthy, no antecedent illness, and they suddenly die, and the 2 patterns are dying in sleep, typically from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., or dying during sports. By the way, both of those time periods, there's a rise in norepinephrine, epinephrine, which is probably an internal trigger for this. And there's no suicide, there's no drug overdose, there's no motor vehicle accident. It is the COVID-19 vaccine and subclinical myocarditis, like in the Guild paper, until the parents come out or the family comes out and they tell us otherwise.
So just to quickly summarize, the post-vaccine myocarditis, there's a few things that you really need to know. First of all, it happens very frequently. It can happen as frequently as 1 in 30 people who've had the vaccine per shot. This comes out of several studies. They did a study in Thailand with 200 boys. They did a study of 800 healthcare workers in Switzerland, where they took their blood work after getting their booster shots. 3 days later, 1 in 30 had evidence of heart damage and myocarditis. What he's saying about subclinical myocarditis is another thing that you need to know, and that is it's silent. You have no symptoms. You don't know that you have it. You don't have chest pain, you don't have shortness of breath. It's completely silent. And all that happens is thousands of people are walking around with inflammation of the heart. They get these little scars, and then all you need is a surge of stress hormones. And that happens when you're sick. So when you get the flu, or when you get strep throat, it happens when you're exercising. So a lot of these people who are collapsing while they're exercising, while they're doing sports. And it happens in the early morning hours, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., when your body sends a surge of stress hormones to help your body wake up. And that's when some of these people collapse. They're found slumped over beside the bed or in the bed, and usually resuscitation is almost impossible. The vast majority of these sudden deaths are happening because of the inflammation of the heart and the characteristics. It happens in women as well as in men. For women, the risk of myocarditis, post-vaccine myocarditis, is at 45 to 55 years old. We're going to throw some examples. Lisa Marie Presley collapsed, 54 years old. Sister of Fox News reporter Megyn Kelly collapsed, died of a heart attack, 57 years old. That is the peak risk age range for women. For men, it's 18 to 24 is the peak risk. That's why now we're seeing high school athletes collapse. We're seeing university and college athletes collapse, and then young men in general. It's happening to young doctors as well. The young doctors are the ones dying the most. And if you look at across all age groups. The next category I'm just going to talk about briefly is blood clots. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Died Suddenly. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's worth watching. It tells you about these bizarre blood clots that are being formed after the COVID-19 vaccines. Bottom line is these are not normal blood clots. They have protein built into them. And the protein is called amyloid. And it comes from the mRNA vaccine itself. The sequence, the mRNA sequence that codes for the spike protein has a whole bunch of stuff in it, including 7 sequences that when they're translated, and they did this in the lab, they cut up the spike protein mRNA, they sequenced it, and there's 7 proteins that come out that are amyloid proteins. 3 of them have the ability to make long fibrils. That's why you see these long rubbery clots that they're pulling out of people, is these proteins just keep building on each other and the body is unable to break those clots down. So sometimes you'll hear a story, someone developed blood clots. They were put on blood thinners, the blood thinners didn't do anything. It's because you cannot break these clots down because there's so much protein that is built into these clots. And they just get bigger and bigger and bigger over many months. And then if they get dislodged, if they go in your lung, if they go in your heart, if they go in your brain, those can be fatal. The last category of sudden deaths, which again, almost nobody's talking about, is spike protein getting in the brain, neurological side effects. If you've ever seen these videos of people convulsing uncontrollably after they got their vaccine, it's a consequence of the spike protein getting in the brain, causing inflammation in the brain. You get all kinds of paralysis, you get vision problems, you get hearing problems, you get movement disorders, you get seizures. And those seizures can be fatal, and it's the last video I want to show you.
With young, healthy people in the prime of their lives simply falling down dead, the list of fatal side effects from these injections is truly stupefying. While now, there are videos emerging of a terrifying new condition that's popping up all over the world. What you're looking at now is footage from security cameras that shows people suffering from the effects of some mysterious attack on their bodies. In every case, it follows the same pattern. The affected person stops what they're doing and looks around as if they hear something slowly turning their head. Then they start flailing their arms and legs, kicking and thrashing like they're fending off some invisible attacker. This is followed by collapsing on the ground in a convulsion, writhing and twisting in uncontrollable spasms. The incidents of this bizarre and frightening new malady have come out of nowhere, and now it's being captured by CCTVs around the world. Now, to be fair, it's not clear if this vaccine death spiral is linked to the CCP injections, but when you consider the alarming number of other gruesome side effects from this vaccine, it's not hard to believe. As far as we can tell, this has never been witnessed before. And if that's the case, then we have to consider what could be responsible. Now let's think. What's the biggest new variable the world has seen in the last 2 years? Well, if you're not a brain-dead member of the branch Covidian Fauci cult, then the answer is simple. Nearly 70% of the world has submitted to the COVID injections. That's 5.3 billion people whose bodies are now struggling to adapt and overcome the so-called vaccine's toxic effects.
The neurological injuries from the COVID-19 vaccines are horrendous. And that's why I wanted to show this to you, just so you have an idea of what that sometimes looks like. There's a lot of videos of people being bedridden, convulsing uncontrollably from neurological side effects of the vaccine. It's inflammation in the brain, and that's what it is. And last thing I want to mention is that there does seem to be an increase in mental health disorders following the vaccine, increase in anxiety, increase in depression, increase in psychotic episodes, changes in behavior, changes in personality, and I believe that leads to an increased suicide risk as well. And I think what we're going to find with time is that there is increased suicides in the vaccinated population as well as a consequence of inflammation in the brain. So just to summarize, if you have a loved one, if you're vaccinated, or if you have a loved one who's vaccinated, you're worried about your children, your grandchildren, you have to be proactive. You can't be reactive with this, because if you wait until you have symptoms, a lot of times the damage is done. The damage is done, and it's very, very hard to reverse. There are things you can take to treat. And so I just put up a few supplements on there as a suggestion for each of these categories of side effects. Because if you want to be proactive with your health and you want to give, you don't want to basically be the person who's found dead suddenly because you had a heart inflammation, for example, that you didn't know about. So for heart inflammation, no one is suggesting anything. No doctors are not even acknowledging it exists. But taurine is a supplement that's found in energy drinks. It's an amino acid. It's an anti-inflammatory that really seems to treat heart inflammation. It's in the diet. The Japanese have very, very high intake of taurine. They eat octopus, seafood, fish. And taurine has been found as one of the nutritional elements in their diet that is contributing to their longevity, where they are living to 80, 90, 100 years old, and they have very, very low incidence of heart disease because it counteracts heart inflammation. In Japan, it's actually approved for the treatment of heart failure. Taurine is like a $10 supplement on Amazon. It is dirt cheap, it is widely available, and it is something that may save a young athletic person's life from a sudden death if they have a heart inflammation they don't know about. Nattokinase is an enzyme, again developed in Japan from fermentation of soybeans. It's slightly more expensive, maybe $20 per bottle, and it breaks down regular blood clots. It breaks down amyloid blood clots, which are those long, rubbery blood clots that they're pulling out of people, and it breaks down the spike protein. So people that have long COVID, whether they're vaccinated or not, that are suffering from long COVID symptoms, a vast majority of them find improvement in various symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, and so on, when they take nattokinase, because it breaks down the spike protein itself. If you've got spike protein circulating in your system or in your organs, it may be able to break it down. NAC, N-acetylcysteine, is a very powerful antioxidant, again, like $20 on Amazon. You can get whatever brand you want. I just put those pictures up because they look nice. I don't sell supplements. So people can take whatever brand they want. And NAC acts on the brain. It's being now looked at to treat Alzheimer's, to treat Parkinson's. It's being trialed to treat obsessive compulsive disorder. It has mechanisms where it treats inflammation in the brain as a powerful antioxidant to clean up some of the damage that may be being done by the spike protein. And then there's other things that block the spike protein from binding or acting or causing damage in your body. Quercetin is one of them. There's many others. There's olive leaf extract, there's white pine needle tea, there's dandelion leaf, there's bromelain, which is often sold with quercetin. So there's a number of things you can look up and try if you're interested in dealing with the damage being done by the spike protein. So thank you very much. I wanted to share this information with you because no one really is talking about it right now, and it could save somebody's life.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Mackes, let's give him another round of applause. We are very, very lucky to have someone in our own province that is speaking up and letting us know what the truth is. It really is, because there's a lot of other places that don't have a Dr. Mackes who believes in truth over all else. Dr. Mackes comes out here helping us out, so we are actually going to pass a bucket around to help pay for his travel and his time that he comes out here, because we really appreciate him, and I know you do too. Sharon will also be at the back if you want to hand in your envelope, or if you want to use a credit card for a donation to the party. We can only take donations for credit cards for the party. She'll be there, and also she'll be there with a list if you would like to put your name down as a volunteer, and you can tell us what's your favorite thing to do, and we'll be happy to give you a job in that area. Many hands make light work, and even if you're maybe interested in running in your area, even though you don't have a CA, we can still help you out with that. So I want to thank you all for coming out. The most important thing is sharing the information. Share the information Bob has back there on paper. There's a QR code on that WEF write-up that he has, and it's a live document. So he's continually updating it. That QR code takes it directly to the live document where you can click the links and you can look for yourself the proof behind all of the write-ups. And also, please go to our Facebook page. Share every single day from the Independence Party Facebook page, because, well, Facebook likes to shadow ban. It's like the white shadow. They like to hide our stuff very actively. So unless you go out seeking for it, you won't, very rarely does it pop up. So the way it pops up is if you continually share it every single day. Just put something out. And that's the way people can find where to go. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. Keep the conversation going. Being brave is the most important thing, and it's the most difficult. But being brave to speak up, and eventually you're planting seeds, and we'll let it grow. I want to thank you all for coming out. We really, really appreciate your time and your effort and your help and your donations. And if you want to buy a sign, you can get one free if you donate over $250. Tempting, ain't it? And you know what? That'll only end up costing you $50 because you get like $150 tax credit refund on your taxes. So there you go. So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you again, and we'll talk to you soon. And watch out for the emails and texts